Yes. So we're entering a wonderful time of Pesach, and this is the month of Nisan, a very powerful month because of the month of being born again, being renewed, being rejuvenated, becoming a new person, setting aside on new goals, new things in life, and it's a time for change. So we must be able to embrace the change, and this is what I want to talk about you today. Uh, what is this change? What about this change that this month brings forth? But before I start, I just want to dedicate this shiur to all those who've had their anniversaries and birthdays, which I don't know, and I don't know, I just don't know. So if I have missed it, please forgive me for it. And especially today, keep in prayer Niveta, Dr. Shashi's daughter-in-law, who has been admitted for a delivery, and may God bless the child, may God bless and give a healthy child, may the delivery be normal, may the delivery be good, without any kind of perchance. So just keep on prayer and may God bless her tremendously. And add it to the family and add it to the kingdom. So, friends, this evening, I want to speak to you all about something very, very critical because we are entering this time of Pesach, and Pesach, is very much ignored to a great extent simply because we bring down uh, the entire essence of Pesach into a couple of days, right? We bring it down into what we would conventionally talk about Good Friday and Holy Saturday and Resurrection Sunday, and everything's over and done. Or maybe start a little more. The traditional Christianity would start with a Holy Ash Wednesday and a Holy Thursday and a Good Friday, all this. But if we look deeply into things, the essence of Pesach is so much more than we can even begin to, to realize and understand. And it's not only a time of spiritual revival, okay, but it's also a time that is connected to your overall change and outlook in life. And let me explain this to you why I'm saying this. Because both these things are very interconnected. Your spiritual life as well as your material life is very closely connected to one another. So if one suffers, the other suffers. Therefore, we must be able to, as people who understand this truth, to balance and to keep prime both sections of our existence. One is the spiritual side and one is the material side. It has to be kosher at all times. We tend to look at the spiritual side as something more important and something which is absolutely relevant and absolutely uh, necessary, and the physical thing is not necessary. Yes, I do agree that the spiritual side is important for each one of us, absolutely, because that's the start point of everything. But if we do neglect the physicality of things, then we are not going to be whole, we're not going to be complete and shalom, what the Bible would say, be shalom. We're not going to be whole and complete and shalom. So, when I speak to you all about Pesach, I am talking to you about the productivity and the wealth creation of your soul, which which not only starts from the spiritual realm, but it filters down and it manifests itself into the physical realm in your life. And and in turn, when your physical life gets prosperous and in your physicality, materialism starts getting prosperous, and then you're able to give back to the kingdom of God, and you're feeding back the kingdom of God in this amazing circle of blessing and blessing and blessing and blessing. Once that circle of blessing gets hampered, blocked, stopped for whatever reason, then the flow, the mazal, the flow of this blessing also stops. And then we encounter a lot of unnecessary things in life. To be in this constraint, or this tsar, you say in Hebrew, this mitzrayim, to be constrained, to be in this restriction of blockage, of flow, of spiritual blessings, of material blessings, so that flow does not, complete in itself, tells us that we need to start working on something. And this is what I want to talk to you all today about, because in everything that you're going to read from the New Testament and the Old Testament and a little of the Mishnah, we're going to see that besides all these heavy things that they're telling us, it's also telling us that there has to be flow, mazal, which you would actually call in Hebrew zarima. Zarima. This zarima, this flow is very, very essential. Okay. Now, I just want you all to turn with me to the book of Romans, and we're going to read something from the book of Romans first before we go on to the other things. Okay. In Romans chapter 11, there are a couple of verses. Now, everybody knows about chapter 11 because Paul or Rav Shaul basically takes up for the Jewish people and he says, don't discount the Jewish people because they were foreknown and God had a plan and purpose in their lives. Okay, and there is something very special about the Jewish people that God is going to use, may not be the whole of them, but there is going to be a contingent in the end of the Jewish people that God is going to use for a specific purpose. So let's read. Chapter 11, Romans, it says, Rav Shaul says, I say then, has God cast away his people? So he's saying this in a interrogative questionnaire, in a very interrogative basis. I'm saying to you, has God cast away his people? He says, God forbid. For I also am an Israeli of the Zerah seed of Abraham, of the tribe of Benjamin. God has not cast away his people, which he foreknew. Now, many of us who come from the Gentile world will always say, oh, but God foreknew. No, God did not foreknew the Gentile world. The Gentile world have come into this world. It is the Jewish people that are specifically foreknown. And I'm making this very, very clear. God has not cast away his people which he foreknew. Do you not what the scripture says about Elijah? How he make it intercession to God regarding Israel, saying, how he goes to God and he says, Lord, I'm the only one left, and they've torn down the altars and they've torn down the prophets and they've beheaded the prophets. I'm the only one standing. God says, no, Elijah. There are still more than 5,000-6,000 men who you don't know about, who have not bended the knee to idolatry. So God knows the number of people who, among the Jewish nation, who he foreknew, he knows who to call out. Okay. God has not cast away his people. The reason why I'm saying this is because it's very closely connected to what we're going to study today. Okay. Then in verse 16 it says something amazing. It says, for if the first fruit be holy, the lump is also holy. And this is what I named today's shiur as Challah, the holy lump, right? What is this Challah? We need to delve into this Challah. What is this Challah? For if the first fruit be holy, the lump is also holy, the Challah. And if the root, the shoresh, be holy, so are its branches. And if some of the branches be broken off, and you, being a wild olive tree, were grafted among them, and with them you absorb and you partake of the root and the fatness of the olive tree and its nutrition, do not boast against the branches. But if thou boast, thou bearest not the root, but the root holds you. You will say then that the branches were broken off that I may be grafted in. Well, because of unbelief, the natural branches were broken off. And you stand by emunah, by faith. Be not high-minded but fear. Do not talk against the natural branches and do not be high-minded, but be fearful, because though they're the natural branches, God cut most of them away. And this is an example for us. Well, because of unbelief, they were broken off, and you stand by faith, be not high-minded, but fear. For if God spared not the natural branches, take heed lest he also do not spare you. Behold, therefore, on one side the goodness, on the other side the judgmental and the severity of God. God balances the two, the goodness and the severity. Both. We are so single-minded in when we look at scripture and we look at God, each one's interpretation is different. God is love, that's it. Or God is kind, that's it. Or God is just judgmental and he hates me. That's all I believe in. But no, there is a side to God that balances the kindness, the judgment, the severity, and the goodness. He has to have this balance. So, behold, therefore, the goodness and severity of God on them which fell, severity, but towards you, goodness, if thou continue in his goodness, otherwise you also shall be cut off. And they also, if they abide not still in unbelief, shall be grafted in. For God is able to graft them in again. My friends, listen to this. God is able to graft them in again. But all this is centered around this one verse which says, for the first fruit be holy, the lump is also holy. What is the first fruit? Normally, the first fruits were given were the Bikurim, the first fruits of the land. We studied on Tu Bishwat, if you all were there for that lesson, that when the sap rises on Tu Bishwat, on the 15th of Shwat, comes in December, Jan, sometimes in early Feb, and then the sap that rises brings forth all the fruit of all the trees in Israel. And those ripe fruits are taken and given as first fruits. Why? Because they get ripened during the summer months. So if the first fruits be holy, the lump is also holy. Now, first fruits can also refer to this thing called teruma. What is teruma? Teruma is a specific maaser, which is given in the entire Levitical priesthood to the Kohen HaGadol. Now, I'm going to open a chart and show it to you all. Okay? And I'm going to show you all basically what the tithing system used to be like. And we're going to talk a little on this. Okay. So, this used to be the tithing system that was practiced in the first temple and second temple time. So, how was this tithing system done? Primarily, everybody was an agricultural society. It was an agricultural society, right? So, everything depended on your agricultural produce. Your goods and your services, everything was agricultural produce. When a field was harvested, the first thing that was done with its produce was a portion called the truma. And this truma varied between 1/40th to 1/60th of its produce. which approximately comes to around 2%, if you want to put this in percentage wise. So if a field was harvested, a very miser of a man would give 1/4. 1/40th was allowed if he was a miserly man, because you can't change people's attitude. So 1/40th was a miser man's truma. 1/60th of the produce was a person who was absolutely generous. But most and the most preferable truma was 1/50th of the produce. So when you take 1/50th of the produce, it comes to approximately 2% of your entire produce. So this was given specifically to the Kohen HaGadol and for his family. So everyone who came in and gave the truma would come, and the Kohen HaGadol would collect this truma, and it would be for him and his family, the oil, the fruits, the grain, and all the provisions that were given, and he would use it throughout the year for him and his family. So that was 2%. After that, then you're supposed to give, or the Jewish people would give, the Maaser Rishon, which is 10% given to the Kohanim and the Levites. Okay, 10% given to the Kohanim and the Levites. So this makes it 12%. And another 10% was Maaser Sheni, the second tithes. So Maaser Rishon are the first tithes, Maaser Sheni are the second tithes. And this 10%, the Maaser Sheni, would be brought by the family and brought by the person to Yerushalayim, and it would be consumed in Yerushalayim by him and his family. So let me put this again. Let me bring this into understanding. That you have this huge acreage and you've taken your crop in your field. The first thing you would separate is 2% or 1/50th of its produce, and that would be earmarked, kept aside, untouched for the Kohen HaGadol. From the balance, 98%, okay, you will give earmark and remove 10% as the first tithes to the Kohanim and the Levites. And then you will separate 10% for you when you go to Yerushalayim, for you and your family, and you will eat of it and you will enjoy it in the presence of God in Jerusalem. This would happen in its first year of the Shemitah cycle. The second year, it would repeat. On the third year, there is going to be a change. The third year is very different. So you would still give the Truma, which is the 2%. You would give the 10% to the Levites and the Kohanim, which is the Maaser Rishon. But on the third year, you will not spend that 10% on yourself. This is the year, the third year would be the year of Maaser Ani, for the poor, for charity, for tzedakah, and it would be given freely out of everything that you have. You would earmark, and on the third year, instead of spending it on yourself, you would give it for charity and for tzedakah. And then the fourth year would come back, and the fifth year would be the same. And again, the third year would repeat on the sixth year. And the seventh year, no harvesting, no reaping, no sowing, no tithes, no maaser. This completed the 7-year cycle of the tithing system in Jerusalem. Now, mind you, this maaser sheni, which you had to bring to Jerusalem, right? And you and your family enjoy it over there and eat of it, and because you would come thrice a year for all the chagim, right? So twice a year you have to bring provision for your family. Now, many a time, for whatever reason, for distance, for carriage, there used to be problems in carrying so much. So what used to be done was, this Maaser Sheni would be taken to the local synagogue, and there it would be exchanged for money, for temple shekels. Okay, which is not used for normal trade. So that produce was taken, separated, taken, and it was sold, and the money that was burned was changed into, like what you would say, a currency, exchange currency. And then they would take that exchange currency and they would come to Jerusalem and they would exchange that currency for produce and for food and for all things in this thing. So this is where the story goes, when Jesus sees these people in the temple and they are selling doves and all these things and all produce, and then Jesus gets angry with them, not because it's not part of the system, but they were overcharging people and they were charging too much of interest and they were laying burdens on people, and that's what Jesus was really angry about. So this is how the system worked. Now, there's much to say about this tithing system, but not now. I want you all to listen, and I'm going to open up this part of the Mishnah out here now. If we read in the Mishnah in Seder Moed, it's one of the Seders in the Mishnah, and in Tractate Pesachim, chapter 2, verse 5, it says, these are the types of grain with which a person fulfills his obligation to eat matzah on the first night of Passover. So you all know that on Passover, you're supposed to have unleavened bread, right? Unleavened bread is mandatory. You can't not eat the matzah bread, this unleavened bread. And then it says that these are all the types of grain which a person fulfills his obligation to eat matzah on the first night of Passover. You can eat from the wheat, the barley, the spelt, okay, the spelt, the rye, and with oats. Is everyone able to see the screen?
No, More.
No.
No. How you can see the screen? I've shared it.
Started sharing the screen, but the screen is not visible. It's a black screen.
How is it possible? Let me do this again. Now?
Yes, it's visible now.
Okay. So these are the types of grains with which a person fulfills his obligation to eat matzah on the first night of Passover. You can eat of matzah that's made out of wheat, of barley, of spelt, of rye, and with oats. And then it goes on to say, the Mishnah goes on to say, it says, look at this carefully, it says, and one fulfills his obligation by eating not only matzah made from properly tithed grains, but even with matzah made from doubtfully tithed produce. As long as it is tithed, whether it's doubtful or it's not doubtful or it's perfectly tithed, that's a different thing. As long as it's been tithed, you can make matzah out of that. And the matzah made with the first tithe, from which is truma was already taken, that means, listen, the 2% is removed out, and from the balance, you can still make matzah out of it, of the first tithe. Or the second tithe, which from where you're supposed to go and use it in Jerusalem, that is consecrated. Okay, that also can be used to make matzah, and if it's redeemed in your city and redeemed again in Jerusalem by way of temple shekels, that also can be used to make matzah bread. And then it goes on to say, the priests may eat matzah prepared from challah, or challah. Now this challah is very, very interesting because the challah is the portion of dough that is given to priests or with truma, as priests are permitted to eat of these portions. So now, remember the challah is basically, in Shabbat, if anybody's been in Shabbat and they have this challah bread, right? Because that dough and that bread, the challah bread is very, very special. And it's supposed to come from the highest level of segregated and consecrated grain and flour, and from that challah is made. So, uh, so this is like, and as I said before, bread normally represents the the quality level of a person's soul, the quality level of a person's soul. Matzah specifically talks about the quality of a soul that is humble, it's broken, it's crushed, and all these things. So when it's talking about you, this chala, it's talking about that the matzah that we're supposed to eat, or the matzah that's given and used, comes firstly, point of from the first point, it has to be separated from the rest of the produce. Everything is by way of separation and separation and separation. You cannot use the ordinary for the holy things. You can't do it. If something is separated, it cannot be touched or used for any other purpose. Any other purpose. It cannot be substituted for any other purpose. So, this is giving us a broader picture of the whole of Israel. So, whenever they brought in the grain and the maser and the tithings and the tithes and the first tithes and the second tithes, effectively 22% went in tithes. 22% went in tithes, give and take. The other 78%, you could then go into the market and take your wares and do business with it, or sell it, or do whatever you want, produce something out of it, pack it, wholesale it, retail it, it's up to yours. But all that becomes kosher and permitted for you to do business and parnasa and for your livelihood simply because you have fulfilled your obligations first in separating the truma, the maser rishon, and the maser sheni. Once this is done, what is remained is kosher for you to do business or do whatever you have to do. Are you getting this? And what comes to the priest is this chala or this dough that is needed, right? And it's needed within 15 or 16 minutes, because after 15, 16 minutes, the dough tends to rise, okay, and it starts getting leavened. So before that, the dough is taken and it's made into matzah bread, flattened, unleavened bread. And the priest and the high priest eats from that challah, from the challah bread. So that represents the epitome or the beauty of the quality of the soul that is so humbled and so broken and crushed and flattened out and just acceptable to God. That challah. Okay. So the portion of this dough that is given to priests or with truma, as priests are permitted to eat these portions. Now, taking the analogy of all of this, Rav Shaul is saying in 11, because this is what he's saying. Because see, Rav Shaul is a Pharisee of he's a Pharisee of Pharisees. He is very well versed in the technicalities, the oral Torah, the Torah Sheba'al Peh, the written Torah, the Torah Shebektav, and all the halakha of the Jewish life. And he's taking the Jewish halakha and he's trying to explain something to us who are the Gentiles. Okay, but we don't really understand what he's saying is because we don't have that kind of background. We don't have that kind of background. That's why he says out here, and he's defending his people. He's saying, God is not cast away his people. God forbid. He says, for I am also Israelite. Do you think I've been cast away? He says, the seed of Abraham, tribe of Benjamin. If the first fruit, the truma and the bikurim are considered holy and given in its proper halakha and made holy as its Maser, then everything else connected and where it was separated from automatically becomes holy, kosher, and acceptable to God. Simple, it's very, 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 very simple. And this is what we need to understand. If I take the analogy and try and apply it into our lives today, how do I? We are not agriculturalists. We don't do farming. We don't do, horticulture and this. We don't. So how do we put all this into perspective? How do we say that, okay, I get a certain amount of income every month. It's not via grain. It's not via produce. It's not assorted foods or juices or nothing of that sort, or fruits. But I get one splash of a certain amount of dollars into my account, and that's it. Oh, I do business, money comes in. I raise an invoice, money comes in. Money comes in, money comes, money, and I'm getting money in my account. That's my produce. Okay, now my produce is sitting in the bank account. I'm not like living 2,000 years ago for say, okay, count how many coins do I have, how much of money do I have? No, it's sitting in my bank account. How do I apply all of this? Which means all this is so connected. Now you'll get the point that the spirituality and the physicality is connected in my life. There is no, you cannot remove the barrier, but there is no barrier between the two. It's connected. And for you to live a kosher life, for you to live a life that's of parnasa, and this parnasa that has got to do with living appropriately and for the blessings to come, there has to be a spiritual angle in all of this. Therefore, that material blessing will give back into the system by way of maaser, of tithing, and it'll give back, and the full flow, the mazal, the zarima of this will continue, and society works fluid and perfectly in all of this. Let me try and give you an example. We get money into our accounts and we say, okay, this is my salary. This is my money and I worked for it. It's nobody else's money, it's my money. And that's such a wrong thing, because the money that hits into your bank account is the money that you owe people. Don't think you're never going to be in debt. You're always going to be in debt. You may not have a debt towards a bank or to another person, but you definitely owe your maid, you owe your milkman, you owe the person who cleans your car, you owe your vegetable lady, you owe your saloon, you owe your makeup artist, and the list goes on and on and on. And it's all their money sitting in your bank account. You're getting the point? It's their money that's sitting in your bank account. If you are a person of goodness, you will take out the money and say, this is yours, take it and go. This is yours, take it and go. Take it and go, take it and go. You cannot hold anybody else's money that way. What happens in that cycle is that when he gets the money, then he can bless somebody else who he owes money to. And the cycle goes on, on, and on, and on. If I am a wicked person, if I am so wicked and I say, oh, why do I have to pay so much? And why do I have to pay people? Come tomorrow, I don't have the money. Come next month, I don't have the money. And I hold the money, and I hold the money. I'm breaking this mazal. I'm breaking people's blessings. By me not giving somebody his due, it's just as good as stealing. Because the person you're supposed to give his money to for the services that he's rendered to you, he needs that money to go to the hospital and do a checkup of his child. If he does not have the money, and the child cannot be treated, that sin falls on you. Or he needs to do something important. He needs to pay a bank or EMI, whatever. Everybody is interconnected and everybody is dependent on each other. You're all following this. This is very, very important. The reason why God told the Jewish people, he says, the Levites and the Kohens, they are the end of this chain. They are, especially the Kohen HaGadol. It's the end. It ends with him. The Levites themselves, from the 10% that you give them, they give 10% to the Kohen HaGadol. So it's called tithes of tithes. You give the Levites and Kohens 10%, and from that 10%, they give 10% to the Kohen. So effectively, the Kohen gets 3%. The 1% from the Levites and 2% from you. Okay. But it ends there. But society prospers, and society is happy, and so society is affluent when there is zarima, there's flow into society. And when there's flow into society, everybody is coming to Shiur-Challah, and everybody is having the chagim, and everybody is feasting, and everybody is giving sadaqah, and everybody is happy and giving truma, and everybody. This is how it works. It takes one evil person to put his foot down and say, I don't want to pay people. And it blocks the entire chain of events. That is what you call an evil person. So when Rav Shaul is saying in the book of Romans, if the first fruit be holy, the lump is also holy. He says, you don't worry about what's going to happen to the Jewish people. God knows how to bring them in. And from within the Jewish people, God is going to take out a truma, a 2%, and he's going to take out and make them into challah. And if that lump is going to be holy, trust me, all of the Jewish people are going to be holy because of that. And you and me who have grafted into faith also will get holy because of that. Because Yeshua himself is the truma. Yeshua himself is the first fruit and the bikurim, because he is of the highest level of kedusha. So are we also automatically, if we're connected to him, automatically made holy. But as I told you, it's not only a spiritual thing. This is also a physicality. And we have read this about the tithing system so wrong over the years. And we've said, oh, what's it got to do with us? It's got nothing to do with us. It's the old tithing system that is abolished and all those things. Well, where's the tithing system abolished? Yet we say, well, tithing is abolished, but yet in our congregation we say everybody giving the tithes. What is the system? No system. Give what you're supposed to give. Right? Free will offerings, 100%. Do not be stingy. Give freely to your congregations and your churches. Give freely, friends. Don't hold back anything. You hold back even a single rupee and a person who's hurting because of that, you know what? You're only taking and you're taking. You're taking knowledge, you're taking wisdom, you're taking learning, you're taking and you're taking. But if you're not giving anything back to God, although you have, you're going to be held responsible one day because you're blocking the flow of the blessings. You're blocking the flow of these blessings. Therefore, this is a time and a season where we need to change so much of our attitude, friends. We have to change so much of what we know and what we understand. And I'm telling you, stop being stingy. Just stop. Don't say, I only got 10 rupees in my pocket and I have to give 5 rupees. What am I going to be left with? Come on. I know it's natural that every human being, gets irritated when he has to give money, right? But stop it. If you'll think it's only about the spiritual blessings and not the physical blessings, you are wrong, friends. And this is the time that we need to change. That means this year I want everybody to push and say, enough. Okay, I've concentrated and said, okay, my soul will prosper, but what about my environment? What about my parnasa? What about my family? What about everything? What about my business? What I want everything to prosper. If we understand how the principles of the Bible and of this thing work, one of the things which is very, very close to my heart is I know for a fact how difficult it is for leaders and pastors and their families to survive in a world like this. And whenever I do have the means, I will always go to leaders and pastors and I will give them a certain amount and say, Pastor, this is for you and for your family. Keep it. My heart is very, very tuned to something that way. And I keep doing this whenever I can, all the time. Because my heart goes on to them. Your pastors are slogging. You have no idea what they go through. The pain, the need, but they cannot open their mouth and tell you that we are in need. They don't. But if we're going to be evil, friends, be very careful. Now, this translates also onto the spiritual level, because the spiritual level is connected to the physicality is connected to the spiritual level. Maaser Sheni must be taken from all the grains, wine and oil, plus fruits and vegetables on a rabbinic level, grown in Israel. The produce needed to be kept in a state of purity and eaten in a state of purity in the holy city of Jerusalem at any time of the year. 10% was calculated after removing the Kohen's portion, the Truma, and the Levites' portion, the Maaser Rishon. The main part of the mitzvah, eating the Maaser Sheni in Jerusalem, only applies at the time of the Holy Temple. However, the essential obligation of Maaser Sheni still, where is this? Exists. If any of these tithes are not separated, the produce is known as tevel and forbidden for consumption. The Jewish people are not supposed to even eat any of the produce until they have first separated everything in this format. Now you'll ask me and tell me, the moment money hits my bank account, TDS is cut, tax is cut. If I have to raise an invoice, I have to make sure I have to put GST or there and add the VAT or the GST or the added taxes to that. What about that? That's serving mammon. Where is God out here? Do I pay to God before taxes or after taxes? Or what I'm left with? It is so, what do I say? It is so hurting to actually give somebody else before you give God. And then you're left with the net amount, and a huge chunk of it is gone in your taxes. And then you're looking at your income and saying, once again, I'm just left with what? Practically 50% of what I earned this year. Now from this, I've got this to do and this to do and school fees to be paid and that to be paid and this. Goodness. How much do I take out for God from here? How much do I give? Are you seeing the conundrum? And all of us have been in this conundrum. Tell your friends. But I want to tell you one thing today. Listen, I urge everybody to develop his own parnasa. If you have a chance, start an enterprise that gives you earnings, start a vessel that God gives you parnasa, and that parnasa is kosher and it's holy and it's separated, and then you can be in control of what and how much you can give. But the first thing you need to do is to separate. Very important. Very, very important. Now, this is easier said than done. Friends, I'm telling you this. I'm being honest with you. This is easier said than done. because of the complexities of the economic system that we live in. But if we can find a way of applying these biblical principles and we let this flow go on within our congregations and our churches and our people, I'm telling you, the blessings of God will be absolutely amazing. Let's continue. Within the 7-year cycle, Maaser Sheni is required in years 1, 2, 4, and 5. I told you this. With years 3 and 6 designated as tithe of the poor, and the 7th year, no Maaser were taken at all. This is the extract from the Mishnah 2:5. It says, however, one may not fulfill one's obligation of eating matzah made with untithed produce, nor with matzah made from the first tithe from which its truma was not separated, nor with matzah made either from the second tithe, nor from the consecrated grain that was not redeemed for temple shekels, with regard to one who prepared loaves of matzah that are brought with a thanksgiving offering or to the wafers bought by a Nazri. The sages drew the following distinction. If he prepared them for himself, then he does not fulfill his obligation to eat matzah with them. However, if he prepared them to sell them in the market to those who require these loaves or wafers, one fulfills his obligation to eat the matzah with them. Why are we talking about this challah and this matzah? Because this matzah is the final produce and the quality of your soul. The quality of your soul depends first on you giving your truma, on your Maaser Rishon, your Maaser Sheni, and you're separating everything, and the Bikurim, and whatever's left then is for you and for you to do business and parnasa with. And all this is representation of your soul. So you're producing matzah and having it at Pesach, only it is acceptable, and it's an obligation that is acceptable if you have done the right things. You cannot go and come to Pesach by doing all different types of parnasa in this world, which is ungodly and unfruitful and wicked, and making ill-gotten gains and coming to your congregation saying, oh, come here, I'm giving you tithes, 1 lakh rupees. That is not acceptable. Your matzah, or the quality of your soul, is dependent on how you have you've lived your entire existence. And this is all got to do with the physicality of your existence, not only your spirituality. And this is what I'm trying to share with you today. That is why this is a time of complete renewal. I need to make a change in how I give matzah this year, or how I eat matzah this year. If I'm only going to eat matzah because it's there in front of me, but that matzah does not reflect the source that it's come from and reflect the true level and essence of my soul, then everything that I'm doing is unacceptable before God. One may not fulfill one's obligations to eat matzah made with untithed produce, nor with matzah made with first tithe from which its teruma was not separated from, or matzah made either from second tithe of, nor from consecrated grain that was not redeemed with the temple shekels. This is what Paul is saying, that first, if the first fruit be holy and the lump is also holy, that means that lump that was given, that dough that was given to make that matzah or the challah bread, that is the effort and the produce of a kosher lifestyle, a kosher parnasa, a kosher separation of tithing or maaser that you have lived for the last 1 year. It is not that you just get up one day and say, okay, I've got, I've earned like 10 crores this last year and now I have to give some money. No, it does not work that way, friends. In fact, the scriptures are telling you that you got to sit down with a pen and paper and you got to draw a map out. Okay, this amount of money, this is the 2%, this is that, this is that, and plan how, where, when, and to who you need to give this. And keep that flow, the zerima, going, because once that flow stops, if you stop that flow, problem, because you're literally robbing another person of existence, of life, of blood. Because another word for money is dam, blood. You're taking away his life force, friends. And by taking away his life force, you're putting him in a state that he's not able to thank and praise his God. That sin is going to be on you and me. And truly, when we are in a state of, complete turmoil, it all starts with the financial turmoil. Trust me. When there's lots of money, everybody's happy around you. Your wife is the happiest. Your children are happy. Your parents are happy. Your friends are happy. Everybody's happy. The moment a little money gets a little constrained, then all the questions are asked. The face turns pale, right? All the problems, then all the interrelationships, personal relationships start coming to a test. It all starts with money. And money is dam, it's blood, and it's life force. Just imagine if, overnight somebody comes and takes all your money, just completely makes you zero. What will happen to you? You think you can be just laughing, joking, say, okay, money is gone, it'll come again, right? I'll do it all over again. Don't guarantee that. Don't think you can just be overnight, become a zero and still be a happy and confident person. You can't. I guarantee you will not be. Either you'll become a mental patient, or you'll go and do something to yourself. Because your life force, that parnasa, that money which is yours, is your blood. It's being taken away. Your life force is being taken away from you. So whenever you're giving into the kingdom, and you're feeding into the kingdom, you're not only giving money, you are taking a part of your blood and giving into the kingdom. This is what I keep telling people also all the time. You're coming to study and learn in the yeshiva, you're paying with your blood, with your life. And that is your rectification. And if you want that lamp, the challah, to be holy, and if you want to be part, you got to be part of this system that makes that thing holy. The source, the intent, the produce, everything in its step, in its time, produces the holiness. And this is what Rav Shaul says. He says, we the Jewish people understand things that you do not understand. So don't boast. Don't boast. And don't try and think, these people not more. They're not there anymore. It's only about us. I'm sorry, it does not work that way, friends. And take this. If anyone tells you, you forget about this world and the things of this world, just concentrate on your spiritual life, I'm sorry. It is wrong theology. Don't listen to it. And I can guarantee you, if you take away 2 rupees from somebody, he's going to hate you for the rest of his life. Don't get fooled by all of this. We have to understand that the scripture tells us you have to have a whole, complete, composite, perfect, holy life, and that's called shalom, friends. So I urge all of you all, when you're coming into this Pesach, change our mentality coming into this Pesach. And ask yourself, if I'm partaking of challah bread or bread, matzah bread in this Pesach, what is the quality of this matzah that I'm having? What is its source? Am I happy looking at that matzah and saying, man, I know the quality of my soul right now. Or I have big questions inside of me saying, I'm eating the matzah. But this is not true. This is not the true essence of everything. How do I change it? This is the time, friends. Let's make a change. And let's make a promise to ourselves and make a change and say, by next year, starting now, because now it's too late, let's change the way we operate and let's change the way we function in the kingdom. Because the physicality and the materialism of this world is needed for you to praise and thank God also at the same time. Do not become its slave, be its master. If you become its slave, then it's mammon. If you become its master, then it is blood money. It's kesef. So I urge everybody this Pesach, reflect on these things. And as we're coming into Pesach, let's take these changes, reflect on them, think about them, rectify our lives, get ourselves aligned with biblical truths, how we are going to live. And if you all have been in positions of constriction, restriction, whatever life has thrown at you in the last couple of years, and you felt that things have been pretty low, things have not been moving fast, there's a lot of blockages. I pray that this month would open up all these blockages in everybody's life. That God would learn to bless, that we would learn how to do the right things by His commandments and by the way God has ordained it for us to live, friends. Okay? He's ordained it to live. So think about these things. These are good things. These are biblical things. And let's make a change in our lives, friends. I just want to leave you all with this, with this thought. And next week we're entering into the week of Pesach. Pesach is starting on Saturday night. Basically, once Shabbat gets over, we're coming into Pesach. It's the night of the Pesach. And it's going to be from 12th to the 20th. Right? 8 days in total. I am trying to have, on the 12th night, I'm trying to have Pesach at the yeshiva. It will be online for those who cannot attend. And for those who would love to attend, please send me your names. But it's still preliminary. I'm still trying to work it out. We'll have a very small and short thing. We won't have something elaborate, but we will commemorate and we'll keep in commemoration of Pesach on 12th night. Or maybe 13th Sunday, depending on how everybody's placed and how we can work it out. So this, do keep that in mind. And friends, do keep the yeshiva in prayer also. A lot of things that are happening, things that are doing, a lot of changes, a lot of movement. So do remember us, keep us in prayer. That's it. I just wanted to share this with you all guys. God bless. Anybody would like to